Hello everybody, so today I'm going to get into a series of videos about the climate in Latin America, and first we're going to start in the Caribbean, which again generally is quite nice, so let's get right into it. So here you see a map of the Caribbean islands, and it's important to note, the Caribbean islands is really, really interesting because you have a combination of nations that are actually independent and nations that are actually colonies of other quote-unquote parent nations. So we'll get into that in a minute. But to understand, there's over 700 islands in this area. It's got a wonderful tropical climate, so it's pretty much warm the entire year. There are some arid areas where it doesn't get quite as much rain and borderline desert, more like just rocky areas of islands, to be truthful. There are many islands that are mountainous. There's lots of volcanoes, talk about that later, and in general, the wet season is from May to November, but it's always warm. This is just an example of nations that exist. I am not going to go through all of them, but you can read. So those are the islands that are actual nations, and these are the islands that are actually controlled by other nations and some of the nations that actually control them. So it just gives you an idea. Now, when we go into Latin America, and I always like to show really, really interesting things and other kind of videos within this video that I think you'll find super interesting, and a really cool place to go to is in Puerto Rico called Vieques, which is Mosquito Bay. And there is a bioluminescent algae there that when touched at night, it glows. It's like super cool. So let's watch like a little video on it. I think you'll enjoy it. I should turn the volume down.
This bay behind me is called Mosquito Bay, so it might not have the most appealing name, but it's one of the most beautiful in the entire world. It's got muddy brown water, and sure there's a few flying insects, but the secret is you've got to stay up past your bedtime and check it out at night. It hides something really special. I went to Vieques expecting a cool light show. I'm ready. But what I found here was one of the most amazing things I had ever seen. That's so cool. That's amazing.
So anytime the water is disturbed,
so beautiful, man.
The algae glow.
There's a bioluminescent plankton living in the bay that phosphoresces when you disturb the water. All that means is there's a little creature that causes a chemical reaction that produces a flash of light, just like a firefly, but you can fit 3 of these on the tip of a needle. Oh, dude, that looks amazing again. This isn't the only place in the world you can find these little creatures, but this bay has the highest concentration of them, and that makes it the brightest in the entire world. This is incredible. With a normal camera, all you really see is black, so I brought one along that allowed me to capture this light the way the human eye sees it, for one of the very first times. Oh man, this looks so cool. Looks like magic. Oh, dude, that looks so good. Can we move your fingers around a bit? 3, 2, 1.
So I mean, that's pretty cool, and there's just so much more to see here. There are again lots of mountains. These are the Pitons in St. Lucia, so you do have a fair amount of mountains. They're not like super high mountains; they're very hikeable, and then people really like to go throughout them there again. And then there's a little city there you see right by that in St. Lucia, very beautiful. Another place in Puerto Rico is the Yunque Rainforest. It's just full of life, and you see kind of like this baby wildcat. It's not a jaguar, it's jaguar-esque. Lots of bright birds, frogs, really everything. Crazy spiders. I know you're terrified, but, hey, I think it's cool. And just waterfalls, and you see these rock formations, because, again, you have mountains here. It's just absolutely gorgeous. Another really interesting place is the Pekelmeer salt flats in the island of Bonaire. You see there the piles of salt that are pulled. Also, there is, I believe, again, plankton or algae that make everything look pink. As you can see here, we have our bright blue Caribbean Sea, and then we have our dark pink salt flats. But what's really famous here are the Pekelmeer flamingos. The flamingos here are most known because there's lots of them, and they're the pinkest and like the darkest pink flamingos in the world. So it's a really, really cool kind of a thing. And, you know, for my flamingo fans out there, it's pretty interesting. Now, when we look in this area, of course, there's tons of places to see, and I just gave you a couple of examples of them, but really there's a couple big dangers that you have to worry about when you're living in the Caribbean, and one is volcanoes. A lot of the islands are volcanic. Now, most of them are gone, but they will erupt regularly. So here is Montserrat. This is a volcano that has been active very much in recent years, and this is the Soufriere Hills volcano, and this is just going to give you an idea of what happens when a volcano erupts. Now understand, I'll talk about in a minute, this is all superheated ash and dust. It's called pyroclastic flow. As you can see, it had already erupted, so everything around the base here is not green. So these folks are far away, not in the direct view of it, but as you can see, it just billows and billows, and look how quickly it's worked its way all the way. Look how fast it's flying down there. So if you're here, I mean, you're done. Like, there's no chance to outrun this thing. I just go on. So again, you can see how much what happens here. And again, all of this is deadly. It is superheated gas and rock. Lava isn't what's going to get you. It's this stuff. Okay, as you can see, and all of this is going to basically light on fire until eventually it gets down to the sea. And it just keeps on going. One of the most deadly, actually, eruptions in history happened in the Caribbean, and that was when Mount Pelee erupted on the island of Martinique in 1902. Mount Pelee is a stratovolcano. We'll keep it simple. Really big, deadly volcano. It erupted in 1902. It killed 30,000 people, honestly, within minutes. It completely wipes out the city of St. Pierre, which is actually at the base of the mountain. It's still there, and this is a still active volcano. I'm not quite sure why people are still there, but, you know, they love it. It's their home. It was the worst eruption of the 20th century. You go back to the 1800s with Krakatoa and stuff like that. That stuff was crazy, but this was still super powerful. And again, the key thing here is this pyroclastic flow. This was taken by a ship that was way out to sea that had a high magnification lens, and you can see how big it is. So everything in here that you're seeing, all of this cloud, that's gas and dust, it's superheated. To understand how superheated it is, like, anything that's left is basically rock. Like, if you or I were caught in this, like, there's really nothing left to bury. We're gone. And you can see this is what St. Pierre looks like today, but this is what was left. As you can see, the only thing that's left is stone around that, what was houses and buildings. Anything that was made of wood, something like that, it's all gone. And again, that's what that looked like. Just crazy. The other big thing you have to worry about is hurricanes. Okay, hurricanes are the most dangerous thing. And the key thing about hurricanes is, yes, it's winds. It's 185 mile an hour winds, but it is the flooding, storm surge that comes up, dozens of feet, and the water keeps coming in and in and in and just absolutely destroys everything. So the flooding from the rain, the flooding from the ocean or the sea that is caused by all of this wind, it is intense. And in 2017, we had perhaps the worst hurricane that had ever hit the Caribbean, and that is Hurricane Irma. Hurricane Irma hits the island of Barbuda first, which I'll talk to you about, in the island nation of Antigua and Barbuda. It had 185 mile an hour sustained winds, just absolutely devastating. 90% of the buildings were damaged or destroyed on the island, and then 2 days later, they got hit by Hurricane Jose, and the entire island was evacuated. At that point, there were more dogs and cats than people. There were some few people left that were living in a cricket stadium, but eventually they had to get it occupied. Every single business was damaged, and then you had to get the people out of there because all of the septic systems are destroyed, so you have a huge chance of disease. Just look at these before and after pictures. On the left, look at all that green. Look at all that. On the right, it's all gone. Absolutely devastating. And that's what it looked like on... So we go up here. That's what it looked like. Look at that. I mean, this is like North Carolina up here, the fringes of the storm. And this is as it's crossing over the Caribbean. Obviously, red is and pinks are bad as far as rain is concerned. Went right over Barbuda. And these were just, I mean, it's destroyed. The entire island was destroyed. And 2017... when you look at things like kind of changes in climate and what's going on, it's the costliest hurricane season on record. $294.5 billion worth of damage. There were 17 named storms. 10 of them were hurricanes. 6 of them were major hurricane. We had the big one that hit the United States, Hurricane Harvey, which was a Category 4 that hit the U.S. And then you had Irma, Jose, and Maria. First time we ever had 3 5s in like a century and a half. Hurricane Maria was the one that destroyed Puerto Rico. And this is at one point, they all existed at the same time. We've never had hurricanes that were this powerful that were all going on. Katia at one point got to, it might have gotten just to a 5, but it was definitely a 4. Irma's a 5. Jose would become a 5. And so it's like this give and take in the Caribbean. It's beautiful and the sea is serene. And I've been down there and it's gorgeous. But at the same time, you have like 2 major things, especially the hurricane season that comes regularly. There's a hurricane in the Caribbean, or multiple hurricanes in the Caribbean every single year. And that is a result of like the Coriolis effect and the different winds that go through there and warming oceans. But it's definitely something that you have to be aware of. But nonetheless, a beautiful place to visit. And in some cases, a beautiful place to live as well. All right, guys, hopefully you learned a little bit something there. And I'll see you soon.